We have Chris O'Reilly on the line. He just performed at the Kennedy Center a few weeks ago, but unfortunately health issues prevented me from seeing the performance, but I've been wanting to interview him even prior to the concert. Chris, welcome to WPFW.
Hey, Rusty. Good to speak with you and glad to hear you're back in.
Absolutely. Back on the air and doing well. And I'm really sorry I missed the concert. I was so looking forward to it. But
quite right. Actually, you know what? We were just listening to my transcription of L'Histoire du Soldat, actually. That was the waltz and ragtime. Maybe you played Talk Show Host earlier, but yeah, that's from my Stravinsky record on Nonsuch. That was an interesting recording because Stravinsky did his own transcription of L'Histoire for clarinet, violin, and piano, and of course there was a big percussion part in that score. And when he transcribed that into the piano part, he would make the bass drum and the snare drum into minor ninths down in the bass. And I found a way to prepare 3 bass notes in the piano with some bolts stuck between the bass strings. And it just so happened that, the 3 bass notes that I chose were the exact bass notes for the ragtime. So I would just play an octave and I'd be playing bass and the actual bass line. So that was a pretty special recording. I love that one.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I reversed the order on these things. I will play the Radiohead after we talk, but it was again part of a whole series of concerts that Burnett Thompson has done in smaller environments, and then doing this thing at the Kennedy Center that he engaged you for was just a big challenge for him. I'm glad it worked out so well because we've been friends for decades, and I've been interviewing all the pianists that he's been presenting for the last about 8-9 years now. Yeah. And I certainly wanted to interview you in terms of what you've been doing musically, and also doing your radio show, which was so important for so many years, and blending, your musical genre, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of the interesting things about that Kennedy Center concert, I mean, it was a real bold move on Burnett's part to put that on, but very much within his wheelhouse, Bach to bebop. But we really didn't know. I mean, I'm sure he's had some classical artists and he has some jazz artists, but I don't think he's had anybody who actually split the program between Radiohead and Bach. And,
no.
And my own experience, leads me to believe that there might be some part of the audience that would show up for one half and not for the other. And we had a full house, and they were all really, really pitching for both sides of the repertoire scale. It was really enormously gratifying.
Absolutely. So how did you get into music? What got you started?
Oh, gosh, it was an ultimatum by the nuns at St. Athanasius in Evanston, Illinois, because my mother had actually taught me how to read at age 4. And so the nun said, he knows how to read already. He's going to be bored and get into trouble. We don't want any troublemakers. You can have French lessons or piano lessons at $15 a week. So my mother thought I had perfect pitch, but it was just because I could read the record jacket that Tchaikovsky Concerto in B flat minor. But so she decided on piano lessons, and I don't remember much from my childhood other than watching the Cubs lose every day.
Uh-huh.
But I do remember my first piano lesson, and I remembered it making sense. And middle C was that thing, right between the N and the W of Steinway, and it just we took it from there.
Wow, what a start! Boy, the nuns in my grade school didn't get me into playing piano, but I did just stumble into jazz music when I was in the 7th or 8th grade, and just stuck with it. In terms of being a radio host and teaching jazz history. But the connections with musical genres. My father-in-law's best friend was John Malachi, who was the pianist with Billy Eckstine's orchestra and accompanied Sarah Vaughan.
Of course.
And Tom Barrett was a professional pianist on U Street before World War II, and after the war, after he got out of the Army, it was like taxi cab and postal service and playing at home, but John and Tom would get together and they would be working on classical pieces together. You know, it wasn't just jazz. It was like, and then a nephew of his had a son who was like a prodigy, Terrence Wilson.
Sure.
You know Terrence.
Yeah.
And so, you know, fortunately, my father-in-law lived long enough to see Terrence play at the Kennedy Center.
Yeah, you bet.
And when he was a teenager and he came down with his parents to visit at Christmas time, I took the whole family to see Ahmad Jamal at Blues Alley. And Terrence has told me that was really, really eye-opening for him. And he actually, sometimes as an ending piece, he'll incorporate some Ahmad Jamal piece, you know, after playing Stravinsky or playing Bach. You know, it's similar to what you've done. And I feel so proud to have had that influence on him. And for him to tell me.
There's a lot of cross-pollination over the years. I mean, you know, Bill Evans was a huge Scriabin fanatic.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Ahmad Jamal, you know, I remember Poinciana was an album that I was obsessed with when I was growing up. And Billy Taylor, gosh, my father took me to see Billy Taylor in New York. And he was saying, and even at that point I was in high school and I was pursuing classical and jazz at that point. And Billy Taylor, I was glad to finally be able to see him through the aegis of From the Top many years later, and be able to tell him how thankful I was for his advice to, you know, stick with the classical piano studies. And, you know, no matter what you end up playing, that's going to be the thing that's going to stand you in good stead.
So tell us how you became a radio host. How did that work out?
Well, actually, I'd done a fair amount of, you know, well, I grew up around radio. My late stepfather, Jack Summers, founded the classical station WPFW in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. And on his early demise, my mother took over. And so I was fairly conversant with radio, public radio in particular. And so it was not a big stretch. But I actually had also done a fair amount of public emceeing. Leonard Slacken had me take over the Piano Spectacular, which had me being as an on-stage host with the Minnesota Orchestra during several summers in Minneapolis. So it was actually Gerald Slavitt and George Russell at New England Conservatory who were trying to put this program together. And, you know, Jerry had a pretty good radio voice, but he didn't really know a hell of a lot about music. And so he had seen me there was a profile done on me at CBS Sunday Morning that the host Eugenia Zuckerman did on me, and he saw me playing some, you know, Latin American pieces upstate and Schumann Concerto at Carnegie Hall, and then waxing rhapsodic in my basement apartment about the orchestral density of things like Public Enemy and Skinny Puppy. So he thought, you know, Jerry thought this would be somebody that might have a not terribly stuffy attitude and be able to speak to younger audiences about classical music. So that's how I came to the program.
Who were some of the artists that you had on the show that really stand out to you, that you've seen blossom after you had them on the air?
Well, actually, you know, it's funny because, you know, in the very, very early days, we had, you know, we were, before we were given our marching orders about never having anything but classical music on the program, we actually had ladies like Mambazo as guest artists on the program. We had McCoy Tyner, who was an idol of mine. And that, you know, the real eye-opener then was, you know, of course, I knew McCoy from his Coltrane, you know, modal, you know, hammering of the piano, and he came on and did a Gershwin ballad in the most, you know, beautiful, you know, bebop ballad kind of way. So that was really kind of amazing. So
wow.
We the guest artists, but the most important part was really giving the best spotlight to these young artists and really letting them talk about not only, you know, their music and what music meant to them, but, you know, how it affected their lives and how their lives were, you know, really filled with other things besides music. And that really let the audience into, you know, who the performers were. And that made every show a different constituency. You know, everybody in the audience gravitated to a different artist. So it wasn't as if we were pushing just, you know, kind of one point of view. It was everybody was given their best spotlight, and that's what we were most proud of.
Well, it was quite a run. It's fantastic to have that opportunity and to be able to present all the artists that you did over the years.
Yeah.
How about what in terms of performance and things like that, beyond what you did at the Kennedy Center a few weeks ago? What else do you have coming up?
Well, it's actually, you know, the thing about the Kennedy Center show was, you know, that it was partly because of From the Top that I got into playing Radiohead on the piano, because you know, as I said, we started out From the Top as a forum for all kinds of music, and it was the classical station saying, "Hey, you play 1 minute of jazz, buddy. You are off the air." And so it was just this. We had this way slot in the program where stations could either play what we sent them or break away for local business. And we didn't want our kids to be at the whim of the stations as far as whether they would be heard or not. So that became my solo spot. And once I started running out of two-part inventions and Chopin preludes, I was listening to a lot of Radiohead and Nick Drake and Elliott Smith at the time. So I started doing these arrangements. And very soon thereafter, I was on NPR's, what was that magazine show? Anyway, I was on that and played Radiohead, Nick Drake, and Rameau and Shostakovich, and that program that show was linked to about 150 Radiohead and rock-related websites around the world, and that's how Sony got in touch with me and asked me if this was repertoire I wanted to do. Consequently, you know, I did True Love Waits, Christopher Riley Reimagines Radiohead. It's now celebrating its 20th anniversary. We're coming out with a double vinyl pressing of that in about a week or so.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
But we knew we were doing something right, Rusty, when, you know, get email into the program From the Top. And, you know, people would presume, you know, that I was a classical pianist and that I was playing classical music all the time. And so they would write in after our announcer, Joanne Robinson, would say that was our host, Christopher O'Reilly, playing Karma Police by Radiohead. They would write into the program and say, who is this Mr. Head, and where can I find more of his beautiful?
Great.
So that was, you know, Mr. Head was very good to me.
Right.
So it was really a wonderful opportunity to live by the Duke Ellington adage that my mentor Gunther Schuller always taught me, which was, there are only two kinds of music: good music and the other kind.
The other kind, absolutely, absolutely.
And that's a two-way street. From a performer standpoint, it's important that we perform what we believe in and do that to the best of our ability. And for an audience, it means responding to whatever you're hearing wholeheartedly and honestly, and not with some kind of prejudice about what somebody told you was good or worthwhile or not. So it's really up to both of us, both sides of the street, to determine what's good music and what's the other kind.
Absolutely. It really, you know, a great analogy in terms of the musical genres, and it's good music or the other kind.
Yeah.
How did you survive the shutdown over COVID? What did you do to do things during that period of time?
I'm sorry, during what time?
During COVID, the shutdown when performances were canceled and things like that.
Well, I did a lot of home recording. I was completely immersed in the well-tempered clavier, and so I've now, you know, recorded both books, you know, several times. I actually got to performing them on virtual historical instruments. So I was celebrating the 300th anniversary of Book 1 of the well-tempered clavier with 300 years of keyboard technology. I recorded each prelude and fugue on a different virtual instrument, you know, harpsichord, fortepiano, early piano, historical grands, all of those things. And that's what's, and I also made a huge archive of lectures and meditations on each one of the preludes and fugues, something that I called everything we need to know about playing the piano we learned from the well-tempered clavier. And it's actually a method for addressing Bach and making it making it one's own, really, but really addressing it from the standpoint of what clues this very sparsely notated score gives us in terms of the opportunity and the flexibility and the freedom that Bach accords us. You know, a lot of people don't know, but Philip Glass hasn't written a whole lot of dynamic markings in his pieces, just as Bach wrote very few dynamic indications in his. And you know, a lot of people don't understand that Philip plays his music in a very flexible manner. Mm-hmm. And the idea of solo music is that you're not coordinating with anyone. And one of the most important lessons I learned from the top cohorts was they would be in the middle of, you know, getting through a cadenza of some Wieniawski piece, and they'd be hell-bent for leather, and I would tell them, hey, you know, you're playing on your own. The composer, he or she, is giving you the opportunity to be the master of time and space for this moment. You're not coordinating with a conductor. You're not coordinating with an accompanist or an ensemble. This is up to you to make whatever sound you need in the time that you need to make that sound. And so if you extrapolate that into the whole world of creating, creating your own world, you know, the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, suspending disbelief, playing solo music is all about being the master of space and time in that moment. And I feel like, you know, so many pianists miss that opportunity, and that's something that is sort of the cornerstone of my Bach method, and in turn, all of the stuff that I talk about in my lectures, all available on YouTube, Christopher O'Reilly 360, really bring to bear on every piece of repertoire that you can name.
Uh-huh. And this interview will be available on YouTube because Burnett has made them available. You know, it's been really marvelous in terms of the array of pianists that I've talked to.
Yeah, Burnett.
Yeah. How did you hook up with Burnett? How that connection was made?
We were old friends at New England Conservatory.
Oh, wow. That's really going back. Okay.
We go way back.
Yeah, no, I've been really blessed to, from doing the radio show and just hanging at clubs and stuff like to meet a lot of my heroes, including McCoy Tyner and Gunther Schuller was one that I got to talk to at some point over the years. Jackie Byard was another pianist that I got to hang out with. So I've been really, really blessed, and it's been an absolute delight to talk with you tonight, Christopher. I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation and blend the musical genres. And I sometimes get tunnel vision on terms of the music. And I once played Brad Maldon playing Radiohead and didn't call it Mr. Head's composition, but but I thought it was an original of his. And somebody called me up and corrected me on that. It was the movie theme, I think it was, that closing.
Oh, music,
yeah, you know. So, but
Plus did some great Radiohead covers too. They played some great Radiohead as well.
Well, I do have the Radiohead talk show host queued up now, and I guess we will get things straight this evening. Thanks again for calling in. I really appreciated the conversation, and let's stay in touch. It's been an absolute delight for me.
Rusty, I really appreciate you calling, and stay well, my man.